Good morning and welcome to another conversation about leadership and organizations. It's Kate, Sally and Michael today. And today we're going to be a little bit provocative because one of the things that Sally has said in the last number of days to us is a really interesting statement about how she hates the phrase, the new normal. So today we're going to explore why Sally hates the new normal. Over to you, Sally. What's wrong with it?
I think my concern with the phrase the new normal is that it feels very lazy. It feels like a way to simplify something actually, which is really, really complex, which is around creating a future, that people can buy into and feel that they're a part of. And that the danger is that we will sleepwalk into a new normal because people are assuming that the way things are changing is acceptable to everybody. And we've talked in the past about the importance of leaders considering transition. But what I've observed in the last few weeks is a couple of leaders who are saying, well, we've surveyed our people. They love working from home. And that's the way we're going to do it going forward. It's the safest way to do it. It's healthy and people love it. And I'm just really concerned that leaders are trying to create certainty for people to give them some hope, whereas actually certainty may not be the thing that is actually needed at the moment.
So we're almost back to our very first video where we talked about this difference between clarity and certainty. And we explored that really brilliant model and change between endings and beginnings and the transition periods in between. Kate, what are your thoughts about this phrase, the new normal?
Well, I've heard the phrase a lot, and with some of the teams I've been working with, I've been asking them to reflect on what they've been experiencing over the last few months. And so, several people have said, oh, we're normal now, we've created new norms, and we can move forward with these. And I think what it's reminded me of is that bridges model that we've talked about, which actually people are still in a transition. And some people have still got one foot in the past, still wishing for things to be as they were. And nobody really knows what the future is going to look like. But as Sally was saying, we need that sense of certainty. Often that's what we ask for. And I think leaders are trying to comply with that by making decisions and saying, yes, this is how it's going to be. But actually, we don't really know what all different sorts of customers, stakeholders, individuals are actually going to need going forward. So I think it's rushing.
Yeah. So in essence, what you're both saying, and I think what I'm picking up as well from my clients, is that we need to be comfortable with continuous uncomfortableness. Now that's a great phrase, so I might need a little bit of thinking about. But the phrase the new normal for me implies new is good and normal is stable. So if you didn't call it the new normal and you called it the good stability, you'd be deluding yourself because this is not stable. This is going to continue to change and evolve. And the new normal that you have today might not be the new normal you want in a couple of weeks' time, which is Sally's point about overly rushing into things.
And we've talked to leaders in the past, haven't we, about us entering a VUCA world, a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. But I don't think when we were talking to leaders about that over the last few years that we really had a sense of exactly what that was. But this is it now. So really what I'm imploring leaders to do is to be uncomfortable in that ambiguous space, spend more time thinking about the impact of the decisions that they want to make on the long term, and actually just thinking about providing some clarity for a series of weeks with people while they explore a little bit more, particularly around the psychological aspects of taking decisions around permanent home working, for example, or closing their offices, spending a little bit more time now in that really uncomfortable space while they're exploring what is the right thing to do.
And I think the skills that we always are talking to leaders about, being able to listen and pay attention to what people are actually saying to you, spending time in those side conversations, which people are saying they're not having so much. So it's that whole sense of actually stopping, reflecting, listening, asking questions and collaborating, incorporating what people are saying into some of the decisions that you're making about what you do next.
So if the phrase at the start of this was why Sally hates the new normal, if we stop talking about the new normal, should we be just talking about the current reality? This is where we are today. This is where we are this week. This is what we know with some reasonable clarity for the next week or two. That's our current reality. That's not a new normal. That's not new stability. That's today. Does that phrase improve it for you, Sally?
It certainly does. I'm far more comfortable focusing on what is going on at the moment. But I think picking up on Kate's point is hugely important, ensuring that leaders are taking the time to consult with a range of stakeholders on what is, going to be acceptable and right for them. But also thinking about, from a psychological perspective, the impact of some of the decisions that organisations are rushing and wanting to rush in to make, I think might be dangerous. So I really like that. Let's focus on our current reality.
Where we are now. And actually, I came across a really good model from Professor Carrie Cooper up at Manchester last week, where he was talking about the 4 phases that we've gone through. And the one phase, the sort of introductory phase was chaos. And then there was disruption, adaptation, and the new normal. And it struck me with it that even by talking about that model, the presumption was we're all in the new normal. And yet my experience, there's some people still in chaos. And actually when the schools go back in September, there'll be lots of people in chaos, not just in education, but families trying to cope with a completely different situation. So the fallacy that we're in a new normal isn't right, because some people are still trying to cope, some people are still trying to adapt to things rather than to settle down.
And we mustn't forget as well that for different sectors, some people are also having to cope with coming off furlough and returning to work, or even being made redundant. So it's from a leadership perspective, understanding all those different variations and not assuming that it's easy to move to a new normal. I think that's quite dangerous.
And from 30 years of working in organizations, either being involved in redundancies or leading redundancy programs, I can absolutely categorically state that redundancies are hugely disruptive to organizations, and that disruption does not finish the day the person leaves. That disruption and sense of uncertainty and sometimes anger persists for months and years afterwards. And I get you're nodding at me, Sally. Same experience, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why I feel so frustrated when I hear this new normal. And I was even more disappointed to see Professor Kerry Cooper using it recently. That suggestion that if we just keep communicating and supporting each other, we'll get to a new normal, I think is quite dangerous.
On that note, we're going to leave you. Thank you very much. Get involved, pass some comments on what we've said, or email us directly. Lovely to talk to you all again. See you next week.